a dead man either way. At least this way. I get to decide who I want to be.
Westworld Season 3 brings together Caleb and Dolores and deepens this season's greatest mystery: what host is inside of Charlotte? I've got a ton of theories for you, but first, let's talk about all the Easter eggs and other things that you might have missed. The title of this episode is The Absence of Field. Now, this is a line from a poem by Mark Strand called Keeping Things Whole. The stanza is, "In a field, I am the absence of field. This is always the case. Wherever I am what is missing." Essentially, the poet feels separate from his environment, like his presence is a disturbance in nature. This has a couple parallels in the episode. Caleb's desire for a better life don't fit within Rehoboam's algorithm, but mostly it refers to fake Charlotte Hale, who is painfully aware that she doesn't belong in this environment. The presence of fake Charlotte means the absence of real Charlotte. The creators said the theme of this episode is "Who am I? What makes you who you are?" And this ties into a major Charlotte theory that I'll get into in a little later. The opening scene is a recording made by real Charlotte where she sings "You Are My Sunshine" to her son Nathan. As always in Westworld, these names have symbolic meanings. Charlotte Hale roughly means free and healthy, but in this episode we learn her middle name.
This is Charlotte Elizabeth Hale.
Which is not a random choice. Elizabeth means "God is my oath," here probably meaning that she's sworn to obey Dolores, the new god.
You belong to me.
But we also learned that her son is named Nathan Hale, which means he has given health. He gives Charlotte's life meaning. He is her sunshine. Nathan was also a biblical prophet who shamed King David for his adultery, similar to how this Nathan calls out Charlotte for being false.
But you're not my mommy.
Nathan Hale was also a hero of the Revolutionary War. He was a spy who famously said, "I regret that I have only one life to give for my country." Now, I don't want to read too deep into this, but check out the pattern on his family's coat of arms. These are the same arrows on little Nathan's pillow, and that become the lines in Rehoboam in the opening title sequence. Those lines were dandelion seeds, implying reproduction and spreading the seed, Dolores' main goal. These seeds become part of Rehoboam's algorithm, implying that all humans are fed into its databank, or, as they would say in Midworld, all things serve the beam.
I understood that reference.
Also, Elizabeth was the name of real-life Nathan Hale's mother. Nathan also says that he wants to see a real elephant, which are apparently extinct in the future.
There aren't any.
This shows that he has a love for animals, also that he can distinguish between what is real and artificial, like fake Charlotte. And you might remember that William's daughter, Emily, also loved elephants, and this is why she liked Westworld when she was a child. Elephants are usually a symbol of memory.
An elephant never forgets.
Which is a running theme in this episode and in the show as a whole. The host's memories are wiped, making them unable to learn and grow. Memory creates self and helps to answer that all-important question and the theme of the episode.
Who am I?
For instance, Caleb's mother can't remember who he is because, in a sense, she has a malfunctioning brain.
Who are you?
Or maybe this isn't even his mom. Since his mother abandoned him, what if he just looks after this woman with dementia to feel a connection? So who is this woman? Well, that should be obvious. She's your mom. Then there's the flashback to the moment when new Charlotte came online and we saw her struggling with her new identity.
Who am I?
Charlotte is surprised to see Bernard's orb among the others. Dolores answers,
Like I said, we all have our role to play.
Now this is going back to the idea of story roles or loops within the park. Dolores has written a role for him in her narrative. Notice that the orb is a combination of the gray of the hosts and the red of the humans. This implies that he's actually a hybrid of Arnold and Bernard, and that Ford might have cracked the formula for resurrecting the human mind. The last episode hinted at this too when we see Arnold's memory of awakening Dolores in his flashback. And we've actually seen these two halves of Bernard have a conversation with one another.
Has anyone other than yourself tampered with or altered your code in the last 24 hours? No.
Charlotte inspects a security droid that reminded me an awful lot of the ED-209 from RoboCop. She says,
Sure, we can find some use for them.
Promising the audience that we'll see this baby in action sometime this season. Charlotte has also begun cutting herself.
It's like she's trying to take back control. Like she wants to cut into her skin and rip me out of her head.
Now, I think this is the kind of line that we'll look back on and see that it had multiple meanings and layers. But taken at face value, it sounds like human Charlotte's mind is trying to claw its way out. This Charlotte always feels alien, like she's being watched, as represented beautifully in this shot. placing her in the center of an enormous eyeball. And this reflection is a way of showing her two selves struggling to surface, like we've also seen in the new opening credits. Also, the shot of her face emerging from the goo is very much like the face in the title sequence. The scratches also reminded me of the self-harm that host James Delos inflicted on himself after failing his fidelity test. In both cases, an artificial construct feels alien in its own skin. When Dolores and Charlotte meet for the second time, their wardrobe is very important. Dolores is in black, Charlotte in white. All season long, Dolores has been the black hat villain, and now Charlotte is putting up the appearance of a white hat hero. The two embrace one another in a kind of yin-yang symbol, implying that they complete one another. Now, a lot of people think that Charlotte has Teddy's cortex inside of him. After all, this shot does mirror this one from season 2. But I don't think this is a romantic gesture. It's a motherly one. This also parallels to Charlotte cradling Nathan and Maeve holding her daughter in season 1. It's one of several hints about motherhood throughout this episode. Charlotte's assistant is a very pregnant woman. Caleb is dealing with his own abandonment issues from his mother, just as Charlotte forgot to pick up her son after school.
When you forgot to pick up our son. Again.
So, my favorite theory about this Charlotte is that Dolores took a blank cortex, maybe Teddy's, and imprinted a version of herself onto it, creating offspring. This would explain why Charlotte acts like a farmer's daughter early on, but later wears black herself and strangles a pedophile.
I remember what it's like to be me.
This could be her discovering her inner Wyatt. Remember, Wyatt was the villain personality that Arnold merged with Dolores to send her on a rampage decades ago. Also, Charlotte recognizes Bernard's cortex on sight.
3 of them. And him.
Meaning she has to be someone who has seen it before. Now that pretty much implies Dolores. And by the way, the man she kills is named Thomas, as in Doubting Thomas, the disciple who didn't believe Jesus had been resurrected. Killing him removes Charlotte's doubts about who she really is.
You're not the only predator here.
And, like Charlotte, Thomas was masquerading as someone harmless while actually planning to cause harm. We also find out that Sirach is taking over Delos, and that real Charlotte was trying to smuggle out data for him all along.
What?
I love reveals like this that make you look at her actions over 2 seasons in a whole new light. And when she meets him, she uses the hologram glasses that we saw in episode 1. There is another theory that Sirach has never been a real person. He's just Rehoboam's human representation. The song in the end credits is called Doomed by Moses Sumney. The lyrics are very appropriate to Charlotte. Hollow one with inverted tongue, from whence does fulfillment come? Am I vital? If my heart is idle, am I doomed? She's hollow because she's not really herself and she's looking for fulfillment. And because she doesn't really love Nathan, it's like her heart is idle, making her feel doomed. Sumney and Tessa Thompson also collaborated together on a song called Shed Me, which she sang on the Creed soundtrack. Now let's talk about my favorite new character, Caleb Nichols, whose name roughly means the devoted conquer the people, meaning that if he's devoted to Dolores, they will conquer the human race. Now there's a lot to take away from his storyline that also helps build up this world. Little details like the cop car is opened with face recognition. Also, the EMTs can't work on Dolores until a computer tells them what to do.
Get the machine right, she needs help now.
We're trying until this gives us a diagnosis and a treatment plan.
Showing how reliant these people are on technology to do their jobs. His visit with his mother parallels Charlotte tucking in Nathan. In both cases, the person in bed doesn't recognize their family member. He's taken captive by a couple goons who torture him by short-circuiting the chip in the roof of his mouth. This is called a drip.
It's just dripping.
Most people in the future have them, and that's what these little discs interact with so people can control their mood with tablets. This is one more way of showing that people have become more like hosts as hosts become more like people. Remember, Caleb deactivated his implant, which is why these guys have to jumpstart it. During this trauma, he has a few flashbacks. We see what I'm guessing is a botched heist that he pulled off with Francis, his thoughts of suicide, and the day his mother left him. These flashes of memory are very much like Dolores' memory flashes as she was discovering herself in season 1. And then Dolores begins to recruit him with expressionism and collaboration. The creators said they filled these scenes with diagonal lines to imply that Dolores is like a spider drawing Caleb into her web. They also emulated A Christmas Carol as she takes him through his past, present, and eventually future.
This is where you kill yourself.
In our episode 1 video, I pointed out the many similarities between Dolores and Caleb.
Because you and I are a lot alike.
They're introduced waking up, they're stuck in loops, etc. And here he has even more in common with a host. He has a cornerstone memory when his mother abandoned him, and the strawberry milkshake vomit is very similar to the host's brain fluid. He returns to the diner every year and relives this moment just like a host in a loop. The waitress even says,
Would you to get you started?
like he's a robot that requires being turned on. And most importantly, Rehoboam has already written his future for him.
You'll never be more than a construction worker or a petty criminal because that's all they'll let you be.
And I loved this shot of them walking out onto the pier. Water is a representation of the unconscious mind. It's also where life evolved from, and in Caleb's case, where life ends. So this walk is really a journey into Caleb's subconscious, his origins, and his ending. And this shot beautifully illustrates this journey, showing a road crossing the threshold of life and death, of the conscious and the subconscious. She tells him,
In order to create a mirror world of this world.
now this mirror world is much like the backup of the park that we saw in season 2. It also brings up the idea that all of this could be a simulation, which I really hope is not what's happening. Mirrors and reflections appear throughout the episode, and Charlotte is a mirror copy of real Charlotte. And maybe she's also a mirror of Dolores. But there's another theory that I think is pretty interesting, that Charlotte is actually Caleb. Like all of this did take place in a simulation inside Rehoboam, and she's transferred his consciousness into Charlotte's body. That would mean that all of the action with Liam and Chibs takes place inside the mirror world simulation that Rehoboam has created. I mean, I hope not, but it's a definite possibility. It would also explain other parallels. And maybe this means that in real life, Caleb has already killed himself, explaining why he remembers dangling his feet over the water. Charlotte could also be Peter Abernathy or Teddy, which would be kind of lame because that's what everybody's expecting. But what do you guys think? Who is Charlotte? And let me know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. And if it is your first time here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.